The emergency transmission crackled through the void of space, its alien frequencies barely comprehensible to the universal translators aboard the human vessels. Ambassador HFY of the Galactic Cooperative Council had never imagined she would be sending such a desperate plea to the being's most civilized species, considered barbaric monsters. "Please," her voice trembled through the static. "We have exhausted all diplomatic channels. The Vorthak swarm has consumed 17 systems in the past cycle. Our peacekeeping forces are inadequate. We require the assistance of those experienced in warfare." End quote. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, her weathered hands gripping the console as she processed the message. Around her, the crew exchanged glances that mixed surprise with grim determination. The Galactic Council had spent decades treating humanity like dangerous animals, quarantining Earth and its colonies to prevent their violent tendencies from spreading. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke from the communications station, "we're receiving similar transmissions across all fleet channels. They're broadcasting this to every human military vessel in known space." Chen allowed herself a bitter smile. For 30 years, the Council had insisted that humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable to join their civilized society. They had watched from their ivory towers as humanity built ships, established colonies, and yes, fought wars among themselves. The aliens had seen only the violence, never understanding the deeper currents of human nature that drove them to protect what they loved. "How many ships do we have in range?" Chen asked her tactical officer. 17 battle cruisers, 43 destroyers, and over 200 support vessels within a 3-day jump, Captain. Admiral Morrison is coordinating from the UES Vengeance. The captain studied the star charts displaying the affected systems. The Vorthak swarm was unlike anything humanity had encountered. But the reports painted a familiar picture, an aggressive species that consumed everything in its path, leaving dead worlds behind. It reminded her of the locust swarms from Earth's history, but these locusts traveled between stars and devoured entire civilizations. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, the fleet's xenobiologist, approached with her tablet, displaying preliminary analysis of the transmitted data. The Vorthak appear to be a hive-minded species with biotechnology that adapts rapidly to countermeasures. They've swept aside the Council's defensive fleets like they were toys. "What makes them so effective?" Chen inquired, studying the tactical readouts. "They don't follow conventional warfare patterns. No negotiations, no territorial disputes, just consumption. They arrive in a system, overwhelm all resistance through sheer numbers and adaptability, strip every planet bare of resources, and move on. The Council's forces are trained for peacekeeping and structured conflicts. Not this." The communication console chimed again. This time, the voice belonged to Admiral Morrison, his gruff tone carrying across the fleet channel. "All vessels. This is Morrison. I'm sure you've all heard the Council's request by now. I won't lie to you. People, for 3 decades, they've treated us like violent children who needed to be kept away from the adults' table. Now, those same adults are crying for help." Chen could hear the mixed emotions in her superior's voice. The Admiral had been one of the first human diplomats to attempt relations with the Council, only to be repeatedly rebuffed and insulted. "However," Morrison continued, "there are billions of innocent lives at stake. Civilians who never chose their government's policies toward us. The question before us isn't whether we help those who scorned us, but whether we can live with ourselves if we don't help those who need us." The bridge fell silent as the crew absorbed the weight of the decision. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb, a veteran of the Martian Independence War, spoke up from his station. "Captain, my daughter lives on New Geneva, one of the outer Council worlds. If this swarm keeps spreading," Chen nodded, understanding the personal stakes involved. She activated the ship's internal communications. "All hands. This is Captain Chen. By now, you've all heard about the situation developing in Council space. I want to be clear about what we're facing. This isn't a rescue mission for ungrateful allies. This is about stopping something that will eventually reach human space if left unchecked. She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. The Council may have rejected us, but we've never rejected our responsibility to protect innocent life. That's what makes us human. That's what they never understood about us. Throughout the ship, crew members nodded grimly at their stations. They had joined the fleet, not for glory or conquest, but to protect their families and their way of life. The fact that they now had to protect former enemies who had become helpless victims only strengthened their resolve. On the UES Vengeance, Admiral Morrison was coordinating with fleet commanders across human space. The response was overwhelming. Every available vessel was volunteering for the mission, even ships that would need weeks to reach the conflict zone. "Sir," his aide reported, "we're getting responses from the frontier colonies too. The new Texas Defense Force, the Siberian Outer Territories Fleet, even the independent miners' guilds are offering support." Morrison felt a surge of pride in his species. Despite their reputation for violence, humans had always been at their best when protecting others. The galaxy was about to learn why Earth was called a death world, and why its children had inherited more than just physical resilience from their harsh birth world. The tactical display showed the fleet's composition taking shape: heavy cruisers designed for sustained combat, destroyers built for speed and firepower, and support vessels carrying everything from medical supplies to engineering equipment. Unlike the elegant, specialized ships of Council fleets, human vessels were built for versatility and durability. Back on the UES Defiance, Chen received the final coordination briefings. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. While Council forces would continue their defensive actions, the human fleet would strike directly at the swarm's advance formations, using tactics that the aliens' careful military protocols would never approve. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Rodriguez called out, "Admiral Morrison is requesting final fleet status reports." "Send our confirmation," Chen ordered. "UES Defiance is ready for combat operations." As the fleet prepared for the hyperspace jump that would take them into the war zone, Chen reflected on the irony of the situation. The galaxy had feared humanity's capacity for violence, never realizing that this same capacity could be their salvation. Humans didn't fight because they enjoyed destruction. They fought because they understood that sometimes violence was the only language that predators understood. The navigation officer announced jump coordinates, and across the fleet, captains gave the orders that would send humanity's finest into battle against an enemy unlike any they had faced before. As the stars stretched into lines and the fleet disappeared into hyperspace, one thing was certain: the Vorthak swarm was about to encounter something they had never met before. Warriors from a death world who fought not for conquest, but for the simple right of others to exist. The war for the galaxy's survival was about to begin, and humanity had answered the call. Number when aliens called, the Deathworlder fleet answered. Second document. The first sight that greeted the human fleet as they dropped out of hyperspace was devastation on a scale that made even battle-hardened veterans pause in shock. The Kalani system, once home to over 2 billion beings, was now a graveyard of shattered ships and dying worlds. Captain Chen studied the tactical display with growing horror. What remained of the Council's 7th Fleet was scattered across space like broken toys, their elegant white hulls blackened and torn. Massive bioships crawled across the surfaces of planets like metallic parasites, strip mining entire continents in real time. "Jesus Christ," whispered Ensign Park from the sensor station. "Look at the size of those things." The Vorthak vessels defied conventional ship design. They were organic monstrosities that pulsed with their own life, ranging from destroyer-sized raiders to massive hive ships kilometers in length. Their hulls seemed to shift and adapt constantly, repairing damage and sprouting new weapon systems as needed. Admiral Morrison's voice cut through the stunned silence on the fleet channel. "All units, this is Morrison. I know what you're seeing looks impossible, but remember your training. Big doesn't always mean better, and ugly doesn't mean invincible. Execute attack pattern Omega." The human fleet spread out in a formation that would have horrified Council military strategists. Instead of the neat, orderly lines preferred by civilized warfare, the human ships scattered like a pack of wolves. each captain given broad objectives, but complete freedom in how to achieve them. Captain Chen addressed her crew with the calm professionalism that had carried her through a dozen conflicts. "All right, people, you know the drill. We're not here to fight fair, we're here to win. These things have been steamrolling civilized fleets, because civilized fleets play by rules. Lucky for us, humans wrote the book on breaking rules when lives are at stake." The UES Defiance dove toward a cluster of medium-sized Vorthak bioships that were systematically stripping an asteroid field. Chen's tactical officer, Commander Hayes, had identified these vessels as resource gatherers, likely less heavily armed than the combat variants. "Target their feeding appendages first," Chen ordered. "If we can't kill them immediately, let's make sure they can't eat anything else." The Defiance's kinetic cannons opened fire, sending streams of tungsten penetrators into the bioships at significant fractions of light speed. The Vorthak vessels shuddered under the impact, their organic hulls rupturing in ways that suggested they felt pain. One of the aliens immediately turned toward the human ship, its surface rippling as new weapon systems emerged. Bioplasma cannons spat streams of superheated organic matter that would have crippled most Council vessels, but the Defiance's military-grade armor had been designed by a species that had learned warfare in the radiation-soaked battlefields of post-nuclear Earth. "Evasive maneuvers," Chen commanded, feeling the familiar rush of combat adrenaline. "Give me everything we've got on that thing." The battle became a deadly dance as the human ship twisted through three-dimensional space, its pilot using tactics developed in the asteroid fields of the Sol system. Unlike the stately, predictable movements of Council vessels, human ships fought like they were still atmospheric fighters, rolling and diving in patterns that confused the Vorthak targeting systems. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human captains engaged the alien swarm with a ferocity that stunned both enemies and allies. The destroyer UES Wolverine, under Captain James Park, had somehow managed to ram one of the smaller bioships, its reinforced hull tearing through alien flesh like a bullet through tissue. "This is Wolverine," Park's excited voice crackled over the comm. "Confirmed kill. On hostile contact. These things might be big, but they're not used to prey fighting back." Dr. Hayes, monitoring the battle from her science station, was recording everything for later analysis. "Sarah, their adaptation rate is incredible, but they need time to modify their systems. If we keep changing tactics faster than they can adapt, then we stay one step ahead," Chen finished. "Rodriguez, patch me through to all ships in our sector." "Channel open, Captain. All units, this is Chen. These bioships are learning from our attacks, but they need time to process. Keep switching tactics every few minutes. Don't let them figure out our patterns." The advice spread through the human fleet like wildfire, ship commanders sharing real-time observations and countermeasures. This information exchange would have been impossible for the rigidly hierarchical Council forces. But human naval doctrine emphasized initiative and communication at all levels. Meanwhile, on the massive bioship that served as the swarm's command center, confusion reigned among the Vorthak collective consciousness. For cycles, they had faced the same types of resistance. Organized fleets, using predictable tactics, defensive formations that could be systematically overwhelmed, and enemies that fought to preserve their own ships rather than achieve victory. These new arrivals fought like they welcomed death if it meant damaging their enemies. Worse, they seemed to communicate and coordinate in ways that defied the swarm's understanding of hierarchical command structures. The collective mind struggled to adapt to ships that performed impossible maneuvers, tactics that seemed to change randomly, and an enemy that treated every engagement as if their lives mattered less than their mission. Back in the thick of battle, the UES Defiance had joined up with 3 other destroyers to take on one of the larger bioships. The alien vessel was easily 10 times their combined mass, its surface bristling with weapons that could have destroyed any of them individually. "Coordinated attack pattern," Chen ordered. "Hit it from 4 directions simultaneously. Hayes, what do we know about weak points?" "The feeding apparatus seems to be heavily connected to their main power systems," the science officer replied, her voice tense with concentration. If we can cause enough damage there, do it, Chen commanded. All ships. Target the feeding clusters. Maximum firepower. The 4 human vessels unleashed everything they had at the bioship's vulnerable underside. Kinetic rounds, plasma bolts, and fusion missiles converged on the target in a display of coordinated destruction that would have made their instructors proud. The bioship's response was immediate and terrifying. It began to convulse, its entire structure writhing as internal systems failed. Green biofluid leaked into space like blood from a wounded animal, and the vessel's weapons fell silent. Target neutralized, reported the tactical officer with satisfaction. That's a definite kill. But even as they celebrated their victory, more Vorthak vessels were converging on their position. The aliens were learning, adapting their formations to counter human tactics. What had started as a series of easy victories was becoming increasingly difficult. Chen knew they needed something dramatic to break the stalemate. Hayes, what's the status on that hive ship in the outer system? Still there, Captain. It seems to be coordinating the smaller vessels. If we could take it out, the whole attack would collapse, Chen finished. Get me Admiral Morrison. Within minutes, she was explaining her plan to the fleet commander. The idea was typically human in its audacity. A direct assault on the enemy command ship, using every available vessel in a coordinated strike that would either end the battle quickly or get them all killed trying. Morrison listened in silence before responding. Chen, that's either brilliant or suicidal. With respect, sir. Those aren't mutually exclusive, where humans are concerned. The Admiral's laugh was grim but appreciative. Good point. All right, we'll do it. All ships, prepare for assault on the primary target. This is what we came here to do. As the human fleet regrouped for their desperate gambit, the surviving Council forces watched in amazement. These were the same beings they had dismissed as violent primitives, now fighting with a courage and coordination that put their own military to shame. The final phase of the battle was about to begin, and the outcome would determine not just the fate of the Kalani system, but the future of galactic civilization itself. When aliens called, the Deathworlder fleet answered. Third document. The massive Vorthak hive ship dominated local space like a metallic mountain, its biomechanical bulk stretching over 15 kilometers from tip to tip. Its surface crawled with defensive systems that had evolved over countless battles, and its presence seemed to pulse with malevolent intelligence. Admiral Morrison studied the tactical display aboard the UES Vengeance, calculating odds that would have discouraged any sane military commander. The human fleet was outnumbered 3-1, outgunned by an order of magnitude, and facing an enemy that could adapt to their tactics in real time. Sir, his tactical officer reported, the hive ship is beginning to recall its attack squadrons. They know we're coming. Morrison nodded grimly. The Vorthak Collective had finally recognized the threat posed by the human fleet and was consolidating its forces for a decisive engagement. Within hours, every bioship in the system would be defending the hive ship, making their mission impossible. All fleet commanders, this is Morrison. We have one chance at this, and that chance is now. Execute Operation Thunderstrike. Across the human fleet, captains acknowledged the order with the calm professionalism of people who had accepted their likely fate. Operation Thunderstrike was a tactical nightmare that violated every principle of safe naval combat. But it was also their only hope of victory. Captain Chen felt the familiar weight of command as the UES Defiance accelerated toward the hive ship alongside 17 other vessels. Their mission was simple in concept but terrifying in execution. Punch through the Vorthak defensive screen and deliver a coordinated strike against the hive ship's central command nexus. Engineering. I need everything the reactors can give us, Chen ordered. We're going to be taking heavy fire, and I want our shields at maximum. Chief Engineer Webb's voice came back steady, despite the circumstances. You've got it. Captain, reactors are running at 110%. We can maintain this for maybe 20 minutes before we risk containment failure. 20 minutes should be enough, Chen replied. though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. The first defensive line consisted of medium bioships, arranged in a sphere around the hive ship. These vessels opened fire as soon as the human fleet came within range, filling space with streams of bioplasma and organic projectiles that sought their targets like living things. The human response was immediate and devastating. Instead of the careful, measured volleys preferred by Council forces, the fleet unleashed everything at once. Kinetic rounds, fusion missiles, and plasma bolts created a wall of destruction that tore through the Vorthak formation like a hurricane through a forest. "Break formation and engage at will," Morrison commanded, and the human fleet scattered into individual duels throughout the defensive sphere. The UES Defiance found itself matched against a bioship that kept shifting its configuration, sprouting new weapons as fast as the human gunners could destroy them. Chen watched in fascination as the alien vessel literally rewrote its own biology in response to their attacks. "Target their power distribution nodes," Dr. Hayes called out from her station. "I'm reading massive energy fluctuations during their adaptation cycles. If we hit them while they're changing..." Chen didn't hesitate. "All weapons, concentrated fire on those energy signatures." The Defiance's guns spoke as one, sending a concentrated barrage into the bioship's glowing power nodes. The alien vessel convulsed. Its adaptation process interrupted catastrophically. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull as biological systems failed in cascade. But even as they celebrated another victory, Chen could see the larger battle turning against them. The Vorthak were learning faster than expected, and their numbers were beginning to tell. Human ships were taking increasingly heavy damage, and several had already been forced to withdraw. "Captain," Ensign Park called out in alarm. "The Wolverine is in trouble." On the main screen, Chen could see Captain Park's destroyer, surrounded by 3 bioships, its hull breached in multiple locations, and life support failing. The vessel was still fighting, but it was clearly doomed. "All available ships, assist the Wolverine," Chen ordered, but she knew they were too far away to help in time. That's when Captain Park made a decision that would be remembered in human naval history for centuries to come. Instead of trying to escape or surrender, he aimed his dying ship directly at the hive ship and engaged maximum thrust. "This is Park," his voice crackled over the comm, distorted by radiation from his failing systems. "Tell my family I died doing something that mattered." The Wolverine accelerated past its structural limits, shedding armor and components as it built up speed. The bioships tried to stop it, but the human destroyer was already committed to its final run. At nearly 10% of light speed, the Wolverine struck the hive ship's forward section with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The explosion lit up local space like a newborn star, and when the glare faded, a massive wound had been torn in the hive ship's hull. More importantly, the collision had disrupted the coordination network that linked all Vorthak forces in the system. Suddenly, the bioships began fighting independently, their collective intelligence fractured by the damage to their command center. The tide of battle began to shift as human tactics, designed for independent action, proved superior to the confused alien responses. "All ships, press the attack," Morrison ordered. "The hive ship is wounded. This is our chance." The remaining human vessels surged forward, taking advantage of the confusion among their enemies. The UES Defiance, joined by the cruisers Intrepid and Dauntless, made directly for the breach in the hive ship's hull. As they flew through the massive wound, Chen marveled at the alien architecture surrounding them. The interior of the hive ship was like nothing in human experience, with organic corridors that pulsed like arteries and walls that seemed to watch their passage with countless eyes. "Target acquired," her tactical officer announced. "The Central Command Nexus is dead ahead." The Nexus was a massive chamber filled with biological computers that processed information for the entire swarm. Destroying it would effectively lobotomize the Vorthak forces in the system, leaving them unable to coordinate future attacks. "Fire everything," Chen ordered. The 3 human ships opened fire simultaneously, their weapons tearing into the delicate biological systems that controlled the swarm's collective mind. The chamber erupted in fountains of organic fluid and electrical discharges as centuries of alien evolution were reduced to smoking ruin in seconds. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the system, Vorthak bioships stopped fighting and began wandering aimlessly through space. Their controlling intelligence severed. Within hours, the surviving vessels would either die from system failures or flee to rejoin the main swarm. As the human fleet regrouped and began rescue operations, Captain Chen received a transmission from the surviving Council forces. Ambassador HFY appeared on screen, her alien features showing an emotion that Chen had never seen from a Council member before. Genuine gratitude. Captain Chen, the ambassador began. We owe you a debt that cannot be repaid. Your species has saved not just our lives, but our entire civilization. Chen smiled grimly. With respect, Ambassador, we didn't do this for your gratitude. We did it because it was right. The ambassador was quiet for a long moment before responding. I begin to understand why your species frightens us so much. It is not your capacity for violence that we fear, but your willingness to use it in defense of others, even those who have wronged you. Over the following weeks, word of the human victory spread throughout Council space. The species that had been considered too dangerous for civilized society had proven themselves the saviors of galactic civilization. The quarantine protocols were quietly discontinued, and humanity was offered full membership in the Galactic Cooperative Council. But perhaps more importantly, the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson about the nature of violence. In the hands of those who cherished peace, the capacity for war became the ultimate protection for all who could not protect themselves. The Vorthak swarm would return eventually. But when they did, they would face a galaxy united under the protection of the species from the Deathworld called Earth. And that would make all the difference. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance as it made its way back to human space, carrying with it the gratitude of 1 billion worlds and the knowledge that sometimes the galaxy's monsters were exactly what the galaxy needed to survive.